Yes, thank you everyone for your time tonight. So I'm going to start here, of all places, at this home in Wales with a personal story. Um, when I was 4 years old, my parents took me on their trip to Wales to visit Bertrand Russell. Lord Russell, who had won the Nobel Prize for Literature a little bit before that trip, was an intellectual giant of the 20th century and was a renowned pacifist during World War I. He was in his 90s when we visited him at Plas Penrhyn in Penrhyndiadreaeth in Wales. When he met my mother, Russell was amazed to learn that she was Armenian. She was the daughter of a survivor of the Armenian genocide, which crescendoed in 1915 during World War I. Russell, the outspoken pacifist, said he never thought that in his lifetime he would ever come across a living Armenian because so many had died in the genocide that the Ottoman Turks carried out against them. My mother never forgot that encounter, and she spoke out, as I'm doing tonight, again about the crime of genocide. To this day, Turkey still denies those crimes against Armenians. But that denial is now recognized as part of the genocide itself. I start here today because over 100 years on, we are living through yet another denial of yet another horrific genocide. There was denial in 1915, and there is denial now. Winston Churchill called the Armenian genocide the first Holocaust of the 20th century. The term genocide was coined later by Polish Jewish scholar Raphael Lemkin to describe what the Nazis did to the Jews of Europe in World War II. Adopted by the UN in 1948, the crime of genocide is defined in the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. I'll give you some actual language from the law itself. The Genocide Convention contains a narrow definition of the crime of genocide, which includes two main elements, mental and physical. A mental element is the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. It is this special intent, or dolus specialis, that makes the crime of genocide unique. Importantly, the victims of genocide are deliberately targeted, not randomly, in order to eliminate their group. And the physical element includes killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So that's the international law in a nutshell. It's pretty easy to understand, but you can read more on it here at the UN website. On what Israel is doing, let's start with Dr. Omer Bartov, an Israeli genocide scholar at Brown University. Last July, he wrote in the Times, "My inescapable conclusion has become that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people." Now, here's a list of major organizations naming it a genocide. And I'll pause here a little so you can look at the list. This graph is from last May, so almost a year ago now, and it's based on Israel's own intelligence database. The numbers of those killed, as you can see here, are overwhelmingly civilian, seen in red. It was 44,000 killed in May, but now, as Bob mentioned already, it's now over 71,000. And that's been confirmed, 71,000 civilian deaths, confirmed by Israel itself last month. And that number will rise once outside groups and media are allowed in. Here is a mass burial from earlier this year. Note the doctors and medical workers there at the far end. There was no one else left there to be there that day. We must not look away from this because we Americans are complicit in it. This would not be happening without our bombs and our funding. In Avi Schleim's new book, Genocide in Gaza, he records with exactitude and moral clarity the many war crimes Israel has committed. Schleim explains there have been many genocides in history, but the current one is unique for two reasons. One, it is being live streamed to people's phones. Video and visuals of it are everywhere. That's new. And two, he has 6 pages of quotes from Israeli government officials admitting to genocide. They are saying the quiet part out loud, and that's also new. I'll give you 2 examples of these. Deputy Knesset Speaker Nissim Vaturi said that Israelis had one common goal: erasing the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. An Israeli Heritage Minister, Amichai Eliyahu, suggested that Israel drop a nuclear bomb on Gaza and said there were no uninvolved civilians in the territory. Now, these are the 10 stages of genocide that have been identified by genocide scholars. Note that denial is the last stage of genocide. And this refers to denial by the perpetrators. Our job is to call out that denial and to name it and to use the word. So here's that list again of groups who have named it genocide. And I've highlighted a recent one from last summer. The Lutherans passed a resolution to call it genocide last August with an overwhelming vote of 95%. And you can look it up. They call it a memorial. Their overtures are called memorials, but it passed 742 to 38. This is my penultimate slide, and I'm going to take you now to Cordoba, Spain, to the millennia-old Jewish quarter. The red plaque at the top left, which you can also see on the wall in the center photo, is from 1985, and it commemorates the 850th anniversary of Maimonides in Cordoba, who was born there in 1135. That's his name in the English-speaking world, though. He was an Arab Jew and was known as Moses ben Maimon. Why am I ending here in Cordoba? I was in Cordoba a year ago and walked the immaculately kept little streets of the Jewish quarter, which are not accessible by car. Quite a beautiful medieval village. You can see the medieval synagogue, La Sinagoga, the sign says above at the top, on the left and the right. That's inside the synagogue. And Maimonides' statue is sitting in the middle in this beautiful Maimonides plaza. But the Jewish quarter is in name only. All the Jews were expelled, converted, or exterminated, as you probably know, during the Inquisition by the church. There was no Protestant church then, so let's not say the Catholic Church. They were expelled and exterminated by the church. This area and this synagogue are now museums, and there are Spanish tour guides taking tourists on walking tours. This is the stark reality of genocide, which targets and wipes out whole peoples and communities. And that's what Palestinians are facing right now in our time, including the Christians. What we don't want now is the cradle of Christianity to end up like this synagogue, with no living churches and only museums where Israeli tour guides take tourists. I, for one, don't want that future. And the same goes for the ancient mosques in the Holy Land. And let me finish here in Manger Square in Bethlehem. And those are actually street signs in Jerusalem. A year before going to Spain, I was in Palestine, as Bob has already mentioned. I was on a trip with Mary Westfall and Bob and 30 other Presbyterians. These children are at a Sunday Mass that I attended on that trip in February 2024. You should know that Christians are a highly endangered community. But they persevere and persist in their homeland against all odds. These Christians are what we call the living stones in the Holy Land, as opposed to the stone monuments and the stone churches. And I hope we support them so we won't be left with dead churches as museums. And I must turn back to the genocide in Gaza, where one of the world's oldest churches has been bombed by Israel. Bob went through the numbers, and it is a horrific situation that I'm not going to show you tonight. But I imagine you've seen a lot of it on your smartphones, not in American media, of course. So as the granddaughter of a survivor of the Armenian genocide, I fervently say to you tonight that we must not be silent on Gaza. Silence is never a good option in the face of genocide. Silence is a shrug. It normalizes this really dark chapter. So I sincerely hope that you support the overture on genocide when you meet later this month to vote on it. Thank you. It's hard to, do a presentation or an overview on genocide because it's so gruesome. And I just wanted to cover the topic, but reach you in a way that that's personal for me. So that's how I bookended this story with my own.
Yeah, it was a powerful story. So thank you for that.
If I may, Nushin, thank you very much. This is the second time I hear you speak on the subject, and I'm left both times almost speechless, which is a grave thing to say about a preacher, right? Yeah. The urgency of this overture, along with the overture on embargo, is because not speaking out, ignoring, shrugging, silencing the voices that are calling it what it is, also gives space for the alternative narrative that is prevailing these days, which is not just a normalization of the operation of the IDF in Gaza, but it's also the monetization of what comes next. This current American administration, US administration, is talking about development already, which will cause, that would be the second part of the genocide, which is the displacement of anyone who currently lives there. These are real plans that are being put in place by spokespeople from the administration currently negotiating. This is not a conspiracy theory. These are actual plans being put in place. So I would urge everyone here present to support the overture and go beyond that and start speaking out to our respective congregations and anyone we come in contact with about what is continuing to happen there. The ceasefire, all it did was, stop the massive bombing, very little else. Everything else is continuing, the plans continue.